Alright people, so I don't want to waste no one's time here, but I will be giving out free PSN codes and free $100 Postmate credit on Twitter. Follow all the rules in the description to get one. I'll be randomly picking people on Twitter, DMing them codes. If you guys want to see proof of people receiving codes and winning codes, there's a link down here that says proof. Click on it and see all the proof. There's multiple winners. If you guys want to receive yourself a code as well, entered our next month, all you gotta do is follow the rules in the description. Pretty much follow me on Twitter, turn on notifications on Twitter. Like and
continued to progress and get worse and spread throughout my body
just reply
over
to
a
that
period
comment,
of actually 3 years and 10 months.
As possible. Like I said, if you guys want to get yourself a PSN code or
I had decided against
Postmate
chemotherapy because I watched my best friend and my husband's brother-in-law both die while having chemotherapy, and it appeared to me that it was the chemotherapy that was actually killing them.
Anita takes alternative treatments, but gets worse.
My lungs were filled with fluid. I was breathing with the aid of an oxygen tank. I had open skin lesions. I weighed about 85 pounds because my muscles had all deteriorated. And so I just started to come to terms with the fact that I was gonna die.
Anita's time is running out.
On the morning of February the 2nd, 2006, I didn't wake up.
The oncologist actually said to me, these are her last few hours. She's not going to make it through the night. If there's somebody you need to call them now. And I think it was at that moment that I felt, I guess you could say, I almost felt the life drained out of me.
Throughout the night, Anita seemed lifeless, but her mind was churning.
During this experience, I felt as though I crossed over into another dimension where I became aware of things far beyond that hospital room where I was in.
Anita Moorjani has vivid memories of seeing the afterlife.
I became aware of my best friend who I had lost to cancer. I had been in a lot of guilt because I didn't spend her last days with her because it was too painful for me to watch her die when I was dealing with my own illness. When I met her in the other realm, all I felt from her was unconditional love and understanding. She completely understood why I wasn't there, and it was just really amazing. It was such a relief for me. I was given a choice as to whether to come back or whether to go onward into death. At first, I absolutely wanted to go onward into death because this realm was so amazing. It was just so beautiful. And also, I didn't want to come back into a sick body. But then, the next thing that happened was I started to understand that if I chose to come back into my body would heal very quickly. My best friend seemed to say to me, go back and live your life fearlessly. And it was from that point on that I started to open my eyes and come out of the coma.
I guess that was one of the happiest moments of my life. I mean, I could feel myself ecstatic, probably the happiest person in the world, happiest person in the universe.
But Anita's body is still riddled with cancer.
I kept saying, I'm gonna be fine. I know I'm gonna.
Oh, shit.
ahead and just reply to that comment, and I'll try to get to as much people as possible.
These memories came to him. It could have been during his recovery. In fact, he himself understood that his sense of time
like I said, if you guys want to get
was
yourself a
lost.
PSN code or $100 Postmates,
Dr.
all you guys
Alexander
gotta
and
do is
Christina
go ahead,
both
click on that
say
link in the
that their
description,
near-death
follow the rules,
experiences
and you're good. Alright,
changed
so
their
that's pretty much all.
beliefs.
Hope you enjoy. Peace.
But one woman in Hong Kong says her near-death visions gave her miraculous physical changes. Anita and Danny Morjani had been married 7 years before their lives changed forever.
It was April of 2002, and I felt a lump on my collarbone on my left-hand side, and I went to the doctor to have it checked out. He did a biopsy.
The test results arrived 3 days later.
We were both sitting in the doctor's clinic, and he just came straight out and said to us that he'd run the tests, and what she had was Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was a form of cancer.
I was numb. I was actually really numb.
Fear suddenly entered our life like it had never, ever been there before.
It continued to progress and get worse and spread throughout my body over a period of actually 3 years and 10 months. I had decided against chemotherapy because I watched my best friend and my husband's brother-in-law both
Alright
die
people, so I don't want to waste no
while
one's
having
time here,
chemotherapy.
but I will
It
be giving
appeared
out
to
free
me
PSN
that
codes and
it
free
was the
$100
chemotherapy
Postmate
that was
credit
actually
on
killing
Twitter.
them.
Follow all the rules in the description
Anita
to get
takes
one.
alternative
I'll be
treatments.
randomly
It gets worse.
picking people on Twitter, DMing them codes. If you guys want to see proof of people receiving codes and winning codes, there's a link down there that says proof. Click on it and see all the proof. There's multiple winners. But if you guys want to receive yourself a code as well, I'll be doing this for the next month. All you gotta do is follow the rules in the description. Pretty much follow me on Twitter, turn on notifications on Twitter, leave a like and retweet that tweet that you're going to be clicking on, and then go ahead and just reply to that comment, and I'll try to get to as much people as possible. Like I said, if you guys want to get yourself a PSN code or $100 Postmates, all you guys got to do is go ahead, click on that link in the description, and follow the rules, and you're good. Alright, so that's pretty much all. Hope you enjoy. Peace.
We've identified some.
These memories came to him. It could have been during his recovery. In fact, he himself understood that his sense of time was lost.
Dr. Alexander and Christina both say that their near-death experiences changed their beliefs. But one woman in Hong Kong
were images of deceased people, which were somehow projected from the other side. To them, this theory was confirmed with the appearance on another skull film of
These memories came to him. It could have been during his recovery. In fact, he himself understood that his sense of time was lost.
Dr. Alexander and Christina both say that their near-death experience.
Alright people, so I don't want to waste no one's time here, but I will be giving
the
out
skull
free
group
PSN
believed
codes
these faces
and
were
free
images
$100
of deceased
Postmate credit
people,
on Twitter.
which were somehow
Follow all the
projected.
rules in the description.
The personalities also remembered every detail of all conversations spoken to visitors over a 5-year period.
receiving
Add
codes
to
and
those
winning
skills
codes,
the
there's a link
ability
down there
to
that says
read
proof.
minds.
Click on it and see all the
This
proof. There's
apparently
multiple
occurred when a
winners.
female
If you guys
spirit
want to receive
spoke to
yourself
the
a
group.
code as well, I'll be
She would
doing
tell
it
us
for
what
the
was
next
going to
month.
happen. She would
All you gotta
comment
do
on what
is
we
follow the
were
rules in the
doing,
description.
and sometimes
Pretty much
what we were
follow me on
thinking.
Twitter, turn on
She would
notifications on
answer our
Twitter,
questions
leave a
quite
like and
frequently
retweet that
before
tweet
we'd
that
actually
you're gonna be
asked
clicking on,
on,
and then go ahead
which was
and,
quite
just
embarrassing
reply to that
sometimes.
comment, and I'll
Thank
try to
you
get
for
to as
your
much people as
warm
possible.
appreciation
Like I said, if you
of
guys
what
want
we're
to
trying
use
to
a
do.
PSN code or $100
This communicator
Postmates,
identified
all you guys
herself
gotta
as
do
the
is go
spirit
ahead,
of
click
a
on that link
Mrs.
in the
Emily
description, follow
Bradshaw.
the rules,
And
and
Mrs.
you're good.
Bradshaw,
All right, so it's
who was a
pretty much
very
all.
commanding
Enjoy.
figure,
Peace.
a lady of the upper class Victorian or Edwardian lady. She sounded like that.
We continue from our side of life to influence people still in the body.
But what evidence was there that these voices were really from the deceased?
We knew that we were communicating with deceased personalities.
It was noticeably smaller than a normal size head. But within the face itself, features were clearly visible. We could see the glistening of the eyes, we could see the eyes moving.
And even more remarkable forms were to appear.
They looked like angelic forms.
These memories came to him. It could have been during his recovery. In fact, he himself understood that his sense of time was lost.
Dr. Alexander and Christina both say that their near-death experiences changed their beliefs.
Alright people, so I don't want to waste no one's time here, but I will be giving out free PSN codes and free $100 Postmate credit on Twitter. Follow all the rules in the description to get one. I will be randomly picking people on Twitter, DMing them codes. If you guys want to see proof of people receiving codes and winning codes, there's a link down there that says proof. Click on it and see all the proof. There's multiple winners. But if you guys want to receive yourself a code as well, I'll be doing this for the next month. All you gotta do is follow the rules in the description. Pretty much follow me on Twitter, turn on notifications on Twitter, leave a like and retweet that tweet that you're gonna be clicking on, and then go ahead and just reply to that comment, and I'll try to get to as much people as possible. Like I said, if you guys want to get yourself a PSN code or $100 Postmates, all you guys gotta do is go ahead, click on that link in the description, follow the rules, and you're good. Alright, so that's pretty much all. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.
My name is Richard Cole, and I am 72 years old. I have never been what I would call religious. I've always believed that there was a God, and I believed that there was Jesus, but I've had doubts. I've been a doubter before, but I'm no longer that. And this happened to me in 2005, so that was 6 years ago. And so how it came about was that I was on my way to Monterey. I go up there every year for the historic car races. While I was stopped at the stoplight, I had a pain that started in my jaw, right in the mandibular area, went down my jawbone, down my carotid artery, and into my chest. I said, "Whoa, this is strange." My friend and his wife said, "What's wrong with you? You don't look very good. What's your symptoms?" I said, "Well, my hands feel a little sweaty and I feel a little clammy." I said, "I don't know what's going on." He says, "I'm going to take you to the hospital." I said, "Oh, I'll be okay. I'll go home and take an aspirin. This will be done with." He says, "No, we're going right now." So we went in and they put me on a gurney because there was no room in the emergency room. My blood pressure was extremely high, and they gave me a couple of shots right away to try and get my blood pressure down. And then I went right into the x-ray room, and they gave me some x-rays, and came back in a little while, and Steve, the doctor, a friend of mine, says, "You have a serious problem." I said, "Oh, really?" And he says, "Yes." He says, "You have an aneurysm, but what's worse it's split, and I think you're bleeding internally. 5 o'clock the next morning, I was in the pre-op, the ready room rather, at Cottage Hospital. Anesthesiologist came in and says, well, I'm going to, give you a shot right now, and then you're going to go off to sleep. I said, okay. I said, is the doctor here yet? Yeah, he's here. So I asked to see him. I said, okay, what are you guys going to do to me? And he says, well, what we have to do is cool you down to a real low temperature. And when we do that, it'll be just like chopping a hole in Lake Michigan in the ice in the middle of the winter. Everything's going to stop. Your brain's going to stop and your heart will stop. I said, well, I've never heard of that before. And I read a lot. And he says, we usually don't tell our patients what we're going to do to them, or else they'd run down the hall dragging the IV behind them. They told me when I went in that I'd have about a 50-50 chance of making it. I found out later with that kind of operation where they take your heart out, you have a 10% chance of survivability. So the anesthesiologist put the IV in. I went off to sleep right away, and they start rolling me down the hall to the operating room. And then I realized that I was still conscious and I wasn't under yet. It was like I was for a little bit, but then I was awake again. And I saw them roll me into the operating room. And so I wanted to tell the doctors that, hey, you got to give me some more of whatever it was you gave me because I'm not out yet. But I couldn't speak. I didn't have any pain or anything like that. I just could not open my mouth and get the words out, even though I tried very hard to tell them that I was still conscious. So I'm laying on the table, and there are 3 doctors standing over me and 2 nurses, and they all have their gowns on, their masks on and everything. They're ready to go. And I heard the doctor ask the nurse for the scalpel, and she got it, and she started to open me up from right here down to here. He did. Opened me up like that, and then they got an electric saw out and started cutting my breastbone open. And then I saw them go down and start to take my heart out, and then everything went black. But I was still conscious, but I couldn't see anything. And it was like a heavy black fog, and I'm just standing there looking around. I couldn't figure out what to do next or what was going to happen next. Right then, 2 beams of light came over my right shoulder, so I started to turn around and look over my shoulder to see where it was coming from. And then I heard a voice, and the voice was very authoritative, not loud, but he says, don't turn around. And I'm thinking, well, why not? And he says, don't turn around, because if you see my face, you'll have to stay here. And he says, now, that'll be okay if you stay here, but I have a job for you. And if you disobey me, I won't be happy. And he says, you don't want to see me unhappy. So I said, yeah, well, okay. I better pay attention and do what he says. And then I said, I know who you are. He said, oh, you do? And I said, yeah. And all during this conversation, I had a feeling of where he was, that he was walking back and forth behind me, that he was sitting in a white throne, just a plain chair, didn't have jewels or anything on it, but just a plain white chair. And I could just feel that, and I don't know why. That's what I was feeling. The next thing that happened is he said, do you have any more questions before you leave? I said, I got to think about this. And I thought, I was thinking really hard, what am I going to ask God? Couldn't think of anything. I wanted to be really smart enough to ask him something very pertinent. And so I said, well, I'm going to have to revert to an old cliche. What's the meaning of life? And he starts laughing again. I said, what's so funny now? And he says, well, I don't know why, but A lot of people ask me that question, and it's really real simple, but I tell you what, when you come back, we'll sit down. You can ask me all the questions that you ever will have. I'll answer them for you. So I said, okay. He says, okay, it's time for you to go back. And I turned around. I'm sorry, but he put his arms around me. He put his arms around me. And it was a feeling that I can't explain. It was unconditional love, but it was words. I can't tell you the words. And I'm sorry, but I always act like this because I can feel it again. So, it changed my life. And the next thing I heard was the nurse was saying, I think he's ready to come out of it. His temperature's at 90 degrees. 9 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. First thing I wanted to do was go out and tell everybody I knew what happened to me. But I'll have to tell you that my life has changed completely.
All right, people.
I'm no longer afraid of death. All the problems that I thought were problems are all gone. I don't have any problems. I don't have anything that gets me down. A week later, a guy came in that I knew, and he said, I heard about your experience. I said, yeah, it happened. You know, he said, I heard that you were, you had a near-death experience and that you were out for about an hour. And I said, yeah, that's true. And he said, well, the same thing happened to me. And I said, and then I asked him what the meaning of life was. And he says, oh, that's easy. It's all about love. That was the perfect answer. So I got that message right away. Now I study the Bible, and it's taken me a long time. I've been doing it for 6 years. I'm up to Matthew. I've translated every word from the original manuscripts into English. I was baptized recently. People ask me questions about that. Well, why are you getting baptized now? And I said, because it's the right time. I don't know what else to tell them. I don't believe that you have to be baptized to go to heaven, but I know one thing. I want to follow what Jesus did. He set an example. I want to, so I did.
He lost control of his truck, swerved over my lane. The 9 wheels of the truck rolled over my car.
Don Piper died instantly.
They did all the tests they had at their disposal and determined that I was deceased.
But in reality, his new life was just beginning.
I was driving along a highway one moment, and the very next moment, a fraction of a second, I'm actually standing at the gates of heaven.
90 minutes later, a passerby witnesses his miraculous return to life.
I think his actual words were, "The dead man is singing." Well, that's not something that, you would typically hear. And so, well, you just think, it's air escaping from the lungs. We've checked in, we've run all the tests. We're medical professionals. We know a dead body.
Today on Life Focus, the man who went to heaven and back.
Heaven is a buffet for the senses. It is a sensory explosion. All the sights that we have here, that we see, if I'm standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon and I'm looking at the sunset, I'm thinking, this is just awesome. Heaven is 1,000,000 times more beautiful than that.
In the late 1980s, Don Piper, a busy pastor and father of 3, might have been cynical when people described their experiences after being declared clinically dead. But he never doubted the reality of heaven.
I knew it was breathtakingly beautiful. I knew that it was eternal. I just didn't see how a person could really die and go to heaven and come back and talk about it.
But all that changed one rainy day in 1989. It was here at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Memorial Bridge north of Houston that Don Piper died.
People need to know that heaven is real, and I had a chance to see that.
His chance came after attending a pastor's convention at Trinity Pines Conference Center, several hours north of Houston. The journey began with a small but fateful decision.
That day I paused at the gate and really just decided to go a different route.
Don's new route headed south on Texas Highway 19.
It was raining, cold, the windshield wipers are going.
At 11:45 a.m., he approached the long and narrow Memorial Bridge.
And I couldn't see beyond the end of the bridge. I had a 110-mile-an-hour impact with a big truck. I never saw the truck. There was no reaction time.
The two vehicles collided head-on.
I was driving along a highway one moment, and the very next moment, a fraction of a second, I'm actually standing at the gates of heaven.
Don cannot recall the 90 minutes on Earth, but vividly remembers his experience in a more glorious place.
The brilliance of the light, the magnificence of the light is beyond anything I have ever gazed upon here on Earth. It is almost as if everything is alive. It just glistens.
Several other vehicles were involved in the accident. The truck rolled over the top of Don's Ford Escort, crushing his body.
My internal organs had really been crushed. The roof of the car collapsed on my head, and I had been bleeding from the ears and the eyes and the mouth and nose, which were all brain damage signs.
The arm was basically in the back seat. I mean, those were very apparent injuries.
The dash came across both of my legs, just kind of like a guillotine.
A guillotine that crushed his right leg and nearly severed his left leg above the knee.
4 inches of the femur, the largest bone in the human body, was ejected from the car. Apparently out the window into the lake because it was never located.
His left arm was also nearly severed and missing several inches of bone.
Eventually 4 ambulances arrived. They ran EKGs. They did all the tests they had at their disposal and determined that I was deceased. A policeman got a waterproof tarp out of his squad car, came over to my vehicle so no one would have to see what I looked like in the car. It was quite awful to look at.
The news of the accident reached Don's wife, Eva, but she was not told the accident was fatal.
There's been a wreck, and Don's been hurt. That's all they knew at that point in time. And the thing I remember most about that is just a very real sense of peace just covered me from my head to my toes. And I knew he was going to be okay.
But medical personnel at the scene believed differently.
They actually phoned for the county official, a justice of the peace, to come to the scene to sign documents which would allow the body to be transported to a mortuary.
Until this man came to the scene.
And I was a stranger to him.
The late Dick Honorecker, seen here in a previously recorded interview, was also on his way home from the pastor's conference and stopped to help.
Very candidly, it was as though I was compelled to stop and to pray for him. The Lord just impressed on me very emphatically, very urgently, that I was to pray for him.
So Dick approached one of the officers and said, is there anyone here I can pray for? And he was told no, because the 2 people in the other 2 cars had actually been transported. And I, of course, was deceased. So they said, quite honestly, there is no one to pray for.
But Dick insisted.
And I laid my hands on him and began to pray for him, that there be no internal injuries and there be no head injuries.
At 1:15 p.m., a full 90 minutes after Don Piper had been declared dead, the unbelievable happened.
And I'm hearing a voice behind me. And that voice is the voice of Dick Honorecker.
I began to sing, and all of a sudden I heard him singing with me.
Hearing his own voice singing jarred this survivor back to earth.
I was in utter brilliance in heaven. Now I'm in the dark. and I'm thinking, why is it dark?
His next sensation? Excruciating pain.
It was about to get as sorrowful and dreadful and painful as what I had just experienced was glorious and majestic. Every time my heart would beat, it would be like hitting my limbs with a hammer.
Turned away from 2 local hospitals, Don felt every bump and shake during the nightmarish ride to Houston.
It was just the most excruciating, powerful, throbbing pain that I didn't even know you could feel pain like that.
Don finally arrived at Memorial Hermann Hospital's trauma center.
My internal organs were intact.
Doctors determined Don amazingly did not have any brain damage or head injuries.
And even though my other injuries are cataclysmic, those 2 life-threatening experiences are no longer in existence. They have been prayed away by a man on a bridge under a tarp.
When I saw him in the emergency room, he was being evaluated by numerous other doctors in addition to me.
It soon became evident to Dr. Thomas Grider, an orthopedic surgeon, if they didn't take drastic measures immediately, Don may not survive.
We had to find a way to either take off the leg, or there was a new device that had not been used very often to save the leg.
The experimental device, called an Elizarov frame, had rarely been used in the United States.
Because we have to put it into the leg through the muscles, is extremely painful, and that's why it's only used with a great deal of reluctance.
Metal wires and rods force the bone to grow while keeping the surrounding tissue intact.
The problem with that would be it could conceivably break or fail before the bone healed.
Amputation would be less painful.
He would only need probably 1 operation, then he'd be done with it, and then we could fit him with a prosthesis to let him get out of bed and start moving.
Eva made the difficult decision to try the Elizarov frame.
There was no guarantee that it would work, but at least Don would have his leg.
If you can imagine taking an ice pick and just kind of burying it into your leg to the bone and then moving around it, I had 30 of those on my left leg, and I had 12 of them on my left arm.
There are many times while Don was recovering that he was angry with me for giving that permission, because it was just excruciatingly painful.
I never went to sleep for a year. I just, I fought it, and I strained, and then I would find myself unconscious. I just passed out.
Ultimately, Don endured 34 painful surgeries.
I wanted to go to heaven on a minute-to-minute basis. I never wanted to come back from heaven. I still would prefer to be there than here.
His yearning turned into heavy depression.
That was my scariest time. That was when I guess my faith did waver a little bit, because Don wasn't trying. And that's so unlike him. He's so determined, and he had quit.
It was a dark period, a very, very dark period. 2 things really seemed to overwhelm me, a sense of what I saw and lost, and a sense of what I might ever do that mattered.
It was just too much for him, and I'd fuss at him, I'd cajole, I'd plead, I'd whatever, and he didn't want it. He would just literally turn his head. He wouldn't talk to me. And that was rough. That was very hard.
And people were nice, and they were thoughtful, but no one would ever make the statement, "You're going to be fine. You're going to walk again."
For a year and a half, Don kept his heavenly experience to himself.
I didn't want to share it. I felt like it was a sacred secret.
My advice to him was, you're going to have to be comfortable with sharing this experience. I would suggest you pick a couple people that you know, that you trust.
Reluctantly, Don trusted in David Gentiles, his best friend for over 30 years.
I guess he was just kind of seeing if I would laugh at him or say he was crazy or whatever.
A small part of it probably had to do with the fact that I felt if I shared it, people would think that I just had lost it.
Don slowly revealed more details of what he witnessed during the 90 minutes his body lay lifeless.
I heard angels more than saw them. And what I could hear was the beating of their wings. And so it was just an awesome presence of the angels, and they're everywhere. In heaven, you can hear thousands of glorious songs. You hear them all at the same time, and there is no chaos.
Frankly, to have someone I knew sitting across from me saying, well, and I saw this, and it looked this color, and this was the sound, it was a little freaky.
Don cannot forget the moment he reached Heaven's Gate.
There was a parting of the crowd and revealing, the street, and so I began to move forward. And it was becoming obvious that it's time for me now, having been welcomed, to enter. I'm not sure we walked. I know that sounds very strange. Let's just say we moved.
They moved toward the gate on what Don says appeared to be a street of gold.
The closer you get to the gate, the brighter it gets, and inside the gate is an utter brilliance. I was in the presence of God, and I would never have to suffer pain again. I would never have to be weary again. I would never have to worry again.
But as Don crossed the threshold, he paused.
That pause was my moment to return. The culmination of all those prayers on earth was realized at that moment, as God, in His infinite wisdom, decided it was not my time and sent me back.
Until Don shared his experience, Eva was hurt that Don wished he had not survived the accident.
I was not real happy with him. And so when when I heard about the heaven experience, it was like, oh, now I get it. Because if you've been there, why would you want to be back here?
My experience in heaven was the most real experience of my existence.
I had an eyewitness account from someone who was very credible to me and trustworthy, and so there was a legitimacy.
I know he's not prone to flights of fancy. He's a very logical, think-it-through person. Has always been that way. So when he talks about things that he experienced in heaven, I know that they're real.
As real as heaven is to Don, others who have died and returned describe another place, one that is dark and dreadful.
And they'll say there were screams, there were flames, and there was sulfur. It was an agonizing, horrifying, stupefying place, and it's really, you could see it on their face. And then inevitably they will say, the reason I'm telling you this is because I want you, when you share, to let people know hell is real too.
It was like being in a nightmare and trying to scream, and as hard as you tried to scream, you couldn't get the word, you couldn't get the sound out. And it wasn't a nightmare. It was reality. It was my reality. And I can only say that it was hell.
Several years ago, Sharon Maddox underwent surgery. Under anesthesia, she became aware of herself slipping away to a dark, black place.
The darkness was thick. It was a total enveloping darkness. It was so dark you wouldn't have been able to see the hand in front of your face, is the way I describe it. I experienced gut-wrenching, excruciating pain. It was so unbearable. I don't even have the words to describe how it felt.
There's also an urgency about life and death. When you've had a big truck hit you when you're only 38 years old and your life ends, and then you've been given it back, but it's a different life. You're mindful of the fact that we're very fragile.
Spending time with his family is more of a priority now.
Way to describe that. Yeah. What do you think about that?
He was always a good family man, but I think he takes more time and more pleasure out of enjoying his family and making sure that we really do spend time together.
You know what? It made me feel right at home, because I was home. Heaven is home.
Today, Don travels worldwide to share his story with an eager audience.
I had to find a way to take the mess that I had found myself in and turn it into a message.
If God can resuscitate a dead guy in a red car, He can give you a better life now and a better life in the world to come. Are you ready for that?
How much lingering pain do you still have today?
Quite a bit.
Still in almost constant pain, Don walks with difficulty, and his left arm doesn't turn normally. But more than anything, he yearns for something more.
I have had enormous privileges and joys here in life since I returned. Watched all 3 of my children graduate from college. I've had the privilege of walking my daughter down the aisle, but I'd rather be there.
Is there a supernatural dimension? A world beyond the one we know? Is there life after death? Do angels exist? Can our dreams contain messages from heaven? Can we tap into ancient secrets of the supernatural? Are healing miracles real? Sid Roth has spent over 35 years researching the strange world of the supernatural. Join Sid for this edition of It's Supernatural.
Hello, Sid Roth here. Welcome to my world, where it's naturally supernatural. My guest was just having basic surgery, and he left his body, and there was someone by him. That someone was Jesus. And he received an impartation and revelation from God. This is what he was told. Every person that knows the Lord has a God package inside of them. And as you listen to my guest speak, you will get revelation of your God package. The more you listen to him to speak, the more revelation. And you cannot accomplish your destiny unless you know what God has packaged inside of you. And I am believing that everyone is going to get revelation right now. Now, my guest was having a dental procedure. This was back in '92. And this is the first time he's been given permission to share what happened in a public venue. And Kevin, the presence of God has, since that point, has been so strong on you that I just pray you're able to get through this interview. Is what I agree. But Kevin, you were having this procedure, and you found yourself outside of your body, and there was someone there with you. Tell me about it.
Well, when I first realized that I was out of my body, I at first was alarmed. So I looked around and I thought, well, I'll tell the doctor. So the surgeon was working on me. I'll just point at him and tell him.
You're afraid that the doctor doesn't know that you're dead.
Yeah, and so
got to bring him back.
He wouldn't listen to me, so I walked over and I poked him. And he still didn't think that I was that serious about it. So I went to the nurse, and then the nurse ignored me too. So I went to the anesthesiologist, and she did the same thing. And so I put my hands up in the air, and I thought, well, this is it. And all of a sudden, my body started to glow on the table, and I transformed into my resurrection body. And I said to myself, I look beautiful.
You look like that to me all the time.
Your resurrection body, you will look beautiful. Did you look better than you do now?
Oh, yes, Sid. I was astounded. And I heard a man's voice that was not accounted for in the room. He said, well, that's what you look like to me all the time. And I turned around, and it was Jesus. And so I walked up to him, and he met me right there in the center of the operating room.
Now, Kevin is a flight attendant. You told me one particular day, how many people did you witness to and they came to the Lord?
Well, I started in the morning out of Florida, and by the time I got to New Orleans at night, I had witnessed to 41 people, and they had been weeping as I'd walk by in the aisle and laughing, and I asked them what was wrong, and they said, well, every time you walk by, there's some sort of presence on you. And so before you know it, I was witnessing to 4 rows in the airplane about my visitation, and they all started crying and so I've seen things like that happen.
I wish you were my flight attendant, I can tell you that. But okay, Kevin, Jesus taught you something, and it's in the Bible, but it just really spoke to me about the power of words.
Yes, initially he wanted to teach me, so he started teaching me, and it was amazing. He walked up to me and he said, you know, in Matthew 12:36, I said that you will be held accountable for every idle word that comes out of your mouth. And then he just stared at me, and I started to feel a little convicted because I was a talker. And I felt like I needed to make an adjustment inside, and so he walked up to my ear and he whispered, he goes, you know I meant that, don't you? And then he smiled at me. And so he began to teach me.
What did his eyes look like?
His eyes have a
multiple winners. But if you guys want to receive yourself a code as well, I'll be doing this for the next month. All you gotta do is follow the description. Follow me on Twitter. Turn on notifications on Twitter. Leave a like and retweet that tweet that you're gonna be clicking on, and then go ahead and just reply to that comment, and I'll try to get to as much people as possible. Like I said, if you guys want to get yourself a PSN code or $100 Postmates, all you guys got to do is go ahead, click on that link in the description, follow the rules, and you're good. All right, so that's pretty much all. Hope you enjoy. Peace.
Do you realize how the nicest fucking PC can win? You said you can win this? This gaming PC? This has to be bullshit. Look how nice this is.
Alright people, so I don't want to waste no one's time here, but I will be giving out free PSN codes and free $100 Postmate credit on Twitter. Follow all the rules in the description to get one. I will be randomly picking people on Twitter, DMing them codes. If you guys want to see proof of people receiving codes and winning codes, there's a link down there that says proof. Click on it and see all the proof. There's multiple winners. But if you guys want to receive yourself a code as well, I'll be doing this for the next month. All you gotta do is follow the rules in the description. Pretty much follow me on Twitter, turn on notifications on Twitter, leave a like and retweet that tweet that you're going to be clicking on, and then go ahead and just reply to that comment, and I'll try to get to as much people as possible. Like I said, if you guys want to get yourself a PSN code or $100 Postmates, all you guys got to do is go ahead, click on that link in the description, follow the rules, and you're good. Alright, so that's pretty much all. Hope you enjoy. Peace.